Hello and welcome back to Arctic Fox News. Our next topic is one that has plagued not just this country, but the planet for decades. That's right, it's time to talk about climate change. Our ecosystem is drastically changing due to global warming. A gradual rise in temperature across the globe due to greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, and energy use, and other factors. Climate change has caused and has the potential for far worse catastrophic disasters, extinction, and countless species and uninhabitable environments for humans within the next century alone. But I don't need to tell you that. Or do I? A poll taken in November 2016 by the organization Climate Central claims that the majority of Americans have little knowledge on global warming or see it as a distant threat. Well, if more drastic preventative measures are not taken, the global temperature will continue to rise, the Arctic Ocean will lose all its ice, and the sea level will rise, causing hurricanes to become commonplace. However, these problems can't be stopped without the American people knowing that there are problems to fix in the first place. But in a country that elected a known climate change denier as president, the idea of a national rallying cry is far-fetched. So, I've sent my most skilled ecosystem correspondent, Jonathan, in disguise as a student at one of the most liberal and progressive universities in the nation, University of California, Santa Cruz, to find out exactly how much these students know.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Golden with Arctic Fox News. I'm here to interview UC Santa Cruz students about the state of the environment and see just how much they know. Here with me is my first guest, Ari.
Hi.
I'm going to ask you a few questions about climate change.
Go ahead.
Great, thank you. First question. Can you name some of the consequences scheduled to occur before the year 2100?
Warming of the oceans and other natural disasters and increased temperatures.
I don't know, rising global temperatures. I'm sure there's already wet mass. People have to move because of climate. So climate refugees. The water rising. We're losing animals.
Sea level rise, stronger storms, more intense droughts, as well as more intense storms, melting glaciers. I think there's insects are dying out as well. There's a problem with bees, as well as other insects.
Literally fucking everything's gonna fucking burn to the ground if we don't start making changes right now. So I've been trying to spread the word all day that look at this art over here, dude. Look at this art. Isn't that fucking cool? So I'm gonna show you something really cool. All right, so if we set our phones down and step away from the news.
I imagine that the water will rise in the ocean. Temperatures will rise across the world. I guess that melts all the ice and that causes it.
Oh, actually, I'm vegan, so I actually know this. Our oceans are supposed to be empty by 2050. The ocean, their tidal rise. Sorry, I can't even think now. It's put me on camera, but our tides are supposed to rise doubled or something. And I just know that. Let's see here. We're supposed to have exponential greenhouse gases that are. I don't know.
So I know that most of the polar ice caps will melt. The climate gets hotter and hotter every single year. Sea levels can rise, and by 2070, our oil supplies will be completely gone.
Can you tell me what can be done to prevent or mitigate climate change?
Reduced dependency on fossil fuels probably, and better allocation of the limited resources we have.
Well, I guess the one thing I would tell people to do is try and eat less meat. There's one thing that you can do to help mitigate climate change because of the farms that they produce all the cows live on.
I would assume renewable energy, maybe. Seems like that's what people are talking about. Trying to eliminate the carbon footprint.
I think it really comes from the government level. Only they can really impose a lot of stricter regulations that everyone has to follow. Because while we can do our own thing to help support and try to stop climate change as much as we can, it's just not going to be enough without a larger change.
If we were to just meditate a little bit every single day, that and by meditating I mean completely tuning out from the world.
Sure.
that we could maybe learn to walk through walls like Harry Potter.
Probably start with going to like a better alternative fuel sources. Yeah, I think that's really where you got to go.
You can eat less beef because our food industry is actually one of the #1 carbon emissions. Cows produce the most methane, and because we have factory farming, like it's actually a huge issue. So I'm vegan, and like I'm doing my final project on like speciesism, and people who eat like a plant-based diet and are vegan, people who are vegetarian, and people who eat meat, they had studies done, and it was like if you eat meat, you produce 7.2 grams of carbon like per hour, and if you're a vegetarian, it's like 3.2, and if you're vegan, it's like 2.7.
Well, first of all, the United States could be a part of like joining the Paris Accords. You know, we need to stop fossil fuels. We need to really get in control of how much carbon we put out into the atmosphere, and we need to have definitely more control with recycling and composting.
Last question. Can you tell me about the Paris Climate Agreement?
It was signed by every country, and then we backed out. And I don't know, I guess it was going to lower the levels of CO2 in the air, but apparently it wouldn't be enough to actually do that much help. But I don't know, the idea that every country stood behind it and we're not is a problem.
I don't know exactly what it does. I just know that Trump pulled us out of it, and we're one of the only developed nations that is not in agreement with it, which is not good. It's quite the stain.
A bunch of world leaders came together, I was thinking of President Obama, and decided that they would, each country signed on that they would have a certain goal of eliminating a certain amount of their carbon footprint by a certain year.
Donald Trump holds us out, and the United States is the #1, or besides China, one of the #1 emitters of like carbon and methane and pollution. So I just feel like we need a stable leadership who's going to bring our like country on the right path, who wants to have a world that will be here by 2100 and not like a pile of ash.
So if we were to just all value our English classes or whatever language we originally learned, then maybe climate change would fucking stop. Thank you for listening.
That was very good. Thank you so much.
I'm really good at giving speeches.
Solid.
Thanks, Jonathan. I would say the students of UCSC were fairly well informed. It seems that though many of the students knew of the more popular consequences of climate change, very few knew about significant current events like the Paris Climate Accords, and even fewer mentioned the importance of renewable energy and proper disposal of trash. Of the students interviewed, only 43% mentioned the melting of the polar ice caps, and only 29% mentioned the increasingly severe weather conditions. Of the 6 interviewees that were asked about the Paris Climate Agreement, all 6 knew that Donald Trump is attempting to back out, but only 3 knew what the accord actually is. Furthermore, Trump backing out is not an urgent issue as many people think. The process of backing out takes 4 years, and the White House has announced that they intend to follow the few commitments they're bound to until they can legally withdraw. However, everybody knows about Trump's attempt to back out. Because of the announcement's overwhelming presence in the media, these facts, as well as the fact that only 3 out of 7 total interviewees listed energy reduction, energy alternatives, or fossil fuel and carbon footprint reduction as ways to mitigate or prevent climate change, points to a community of concerned but naive students. These could be the result of headline intake news, or, in other words, there is a concern for issues shared on social media and news outlets, but a lack of further knowledge or research. Every student acknowledges that global warming is a threat, but few can scratch below the surface. The majority of interviewees knew that a rise in temperature and sea level were imminent, but that it's only because those are by far the most publicized aspects of climate change, hence the term global warming. The fact that there was no preventative measures stated by a majority is a sign of the same issue. Recycling and energy uses has not been a hot topic for months, even though they are the most widely known topics because students don't consider and research the correlation between habitual environmental friendly habits like recycling and switching to renewable sources of energy and their effects on climate change. UCSC has made good progress, but as a community that values liberalism and open-mindedness, they still have a long way to go. For real change to occur, our activists cannot rely on passion alone. They must be equipped with the knowledge of why change is necessary. Thank you. Arctic Fox News, out.